Welcome to the show. So, Shannon, tell our listeners who you are and what you do.
So I'm Shannon Davies. I'm a pre and postnatal specialist, and I'm one of the owners of the franchise of Baby Beats, and I work within South Wales.
You've won some awards recently, which we will get into a little bit later on. But just talk to me a little bit about your professional journey because you have changed careers over your professional lifetime. So, what did you originally start out as?
So believe it or not, I started out as a police officer. So I went into studies. I did my degree in police sciences, thinking it would be a life-standing career, it would be a long-term career. And I worked through, different departments, starting with just your standardized police and response officer to those 999 calls. Then I went off to more specialized, so your CID departments and then your major crime. And then I finished off in the rape investigation team where you're dealing with serious crime, sexual offences. So yeah, it was a real eye opener, and I don't think anything really prepares you for the kind of traumas that you sustain. But it was a career for life, and I saw myself staying in that career for years and years to come. I did an 8-year career, which I'm really proud to say. But yeah, after having a baby, things changed. So for me, I think it was a total character shift. Somebody new was born, and it was just an overwhelming feeling. I just didn't recognize myself. I didn't have that confidence that I once had before. I felt really vulnerable. I felt quite scared, and I'd never felt fear. And I know that sounds it's quite a broad thing to say that you haven't felt fear. Obviously, you go on a fun fair ride, you get a little bit of a giddy tummy and you get that adrenaline rush, or going into an abandoned building and not knowing who you're going to meet or whether there is going to be that burglar coming around the corner. I never really got scared. I was quite a confident person. I'd be the first one running into the building to find out who was in there. And then postnatal, I just didn't have that confidence. I didn't have the confidence to speak up. I didn't have the confidence to advocate for myself. I didn't have the confidence to tell a doctor that I felt that they were wrong. Um, I didn't have the ability to challenge when they told me everything was fine. And I was, in back of your mind, you're like, everything's not fine. Everything is quite serious. So yeah, for me, I think it was quite hard to navigate that scenario and actually come around with, who am I now? Am I still Shannon, or have I changed? A massive thing for me was just being called mum straight away. I just felt like I just lost
Yeah.
myself. It was just a total overwhelming factor of, oh my God, shit, I'm a mum. And I totally lost that self-ability and that almost, independence, for want of a better word, where everyone was judging you. So yeah, it was a scary thought.
And I think for me, the weirdest thing, which is ridiculous because your children can't say mum from the word that they're born, but it's when like the health visitors and the midwives and the doctors refer to you as mum.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's like, oh, well, I do have a name. And I get that that's easier for them sometimes to just say mum. Um, but it does feel weird, doesn't it? And you almost have to go through this like evolution of who you
It
are
is.
now.
It is. And I think nobody speaks of like matter essence. Matter essence is one of those things where you're transitioning into motherhood, which, okay, anyone can educate you on that transition. Anyone can explain, look, you're going to feel a certain way. But what I wasn't prepared for is that total difference in self, and just feeling like your identity is fully shot. And I just remember the midwife saying, "So, mum," and I was glazing. I'm looking over there at wherever was going on in the clinic, and she said, "Mum," and I'm still gone. And then it, I've then come back in the room, and she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Oh, sorry, were you talking to me?" And she said, "Yeah, I did try to ask you a question, but I think it's because she was saying mum. My brain just wasn't registering that I wasn't really mum, I was Shannon. And if somebody had said, 'Oh, Shannon,' you turn your head and you look. But yeah, it was really surreal. And I think for me, it was that whole identity shift and just totally losing that confidence that I once had and not knowing how to get it back.
Yeah,
It was really,
yeah.
really scary. It was really
And
scary.
I think we've spoke as well a few times on sort of confidence in your body as well. What your body's just actually done and been through, and then that transition to actually feel confident that your body can carry you.
Absolutely. And I I felt confident. Like I was doing bodybuilding before I got pregnant. I was playing a lot of netball. I was doing a lot of sports. I was in the gym every day. And they always said, if you train whilst you're pregnant, generally your postnatal experience will be great. And yeah, I did have that expectation. I did have that, that hope and that win that I would just, as they say, bounce back. It's not the reality. And I think for me, I went through labor and it was great. I had a great experience in labor, but it was that postnatal experience that nobody really prepares you for. And that crash of hormones and that surge where everything just depreciates in your system and you don't know how to navigate it. You're not given training. You're not educated on what supplements you should be taking or keep drinking the water or look, if you're going to do this, make sure you've got XYZ. No one really gives that to you. And I think even when you're attending, your GP lately, or you have those health visitor check ins, no one really asks those kind of questions. And I think when you do ask, oh, would it be okay if I had a blood test to check my levels? You're almost looked at like a crazy alien. And they're like, whoa, hell no, don't tell me how to do my job. And realistically, all you want is that reassurance. I think, you just want that understanding to go, of course we'll check your levels. Of course we'll make sure that you're at the right stage to be able to fend for this baby and look after yourself. But it almost feels like you're in the dark and it is a minefield to navigate. And had I known what I know now, I do believe I'd cope better with my postnatal journey. But I think, it's only becoming a level 3 specialist that you understand the anatomy, you understand the brain and how it works with the body and how, those hormone levels change rapidly. But unless you're given that knowledge, it's very hard to actually understand the postnatal body. And I think it's just so important that we start helping mums with that initial transition of education and what changes in the body.
Yeah, and I was reading a report actually about the topics that were covered in school, in high school for children. And it was things like they go through puberty, so they're told about puberty. They're now starting to introduce menopause, which is
Yeah.
great. Like that needs to be
Mhm.
done, but also the postnatal period as well. That's still not included in there. But what randomly is wet dreams. That's included. I was like,
Yeah.
that's the most
Oh,
random
good. Yeah.
the includes like I was like, what? I was like, okay, so that's included, but actually not teaching girls
Absolutely.
and boys that this huge transition, this huge life event is gonna, it's gonna absolutely change you as a person. Um, and for some women, it's really subtle, but other women, it's really not, and it's a real full rediscovery of yourself.
Yeah, and I think, I've done talks within schools and I've gone there and, I've spoke about mental health quite openly and the children are they're really engaged by it. They want to understand, and then I get comments like, oh, my mummy was really sad, or my mummy was crying actually when I was little and I didn't know what was wrong, but now I maybe it's because she had my baby brother or sister. But if we're not giving them that education, that adverse trauma or that experience of trauma, they don't understand it and they don't process it and they won't be able to take it into later life for their own. So I think, yeah, giving that early recognition and that awareness, it just gives people that education to be more prepared, I think, and be more aware for family life as well and be able to support each other, especially boys, because boys are very, reluctant to speak about their mental health. And it can be so difficult when you go through that transition with a partner like myself who had psychosis, postnatal depression, and, you know, really, really struggling. As a man, sometimes you don't know what to say. You don't know whether you're saying the right thing. You don't know whether you're saying something that could throw them over the edge. You don't know whether you want to try and build them up or just give them a cut. Or, I think it's really hard for men to navigate that cycle. So, that early intervention in school for men and boys to understand the dynamics of a female body and how they do react and how hormones play such a big part in a woman's life. I do think it definitely needs to come into the curriculum for everyone to understand better. And who knows what job they're going to go into? Because I was having this conversation a couple of weeks ago where you have quite big corporate leaders in jobs where you have mums going off on maternity, you have mums coming back from maternity, and we're not supported. We're not asked the right questions. We're not looked after. We're not asked, is there anything that needs to change for you? Because generally in that male dominated role, we're not advocating for women. We're just thinking that everyone is the same. Nobody needs those transitions. Nobody needs, those mitigating factors that, whether that's occupational health, whether that's an onward referral, whether that's just generalized support in the workplace. And I'm grateful that as your own boss, you know, you rely on yourself. And if you need to take time out, you take time out. But I think HR processes in a lot of places are just not fit for purpose for new mums. They're not there to support them. And there's a lot of judgment, when are you coming back? And that's how I felt, I think for me, I actually I remember writing the email and saying, "I'm really sorry, but I don't wanna be a drain on the service. I don't wanna take all the sick pay because I don't know how long my recovery is gonna be." Now, for somebody to say that is quite like an emotional roller coaster because I'm admitting that I'm gonna be a burden on the service. I don't want to be a burden, but I think I need to step away for the safety of the service to not cost you money, but also to protect myself, and that's a big decision to make, but most people will go on long-term sick. And now retention rate for bosses just depreciates. You just lose it because you're not keeping in check with that mum. You're not looking after them. You're not asking if they're okay. And we're not asking if we can do anything different in the workplace to help them. So self employment, yeah, is a game changer because you can look after yourself. You can train if you want to train. You can stop if you want to stop. And I think your self care becomes a number one priority.
And we're seeing so many women struggling to return back into the workplace. And I think things are starting in some industries to shift slightly because, we do really need to recognize that, as effective and efficient as you were before you had children, you've now got an extra person that's taking up so much of your brain space that you're not going to step into that role exactly how you were before. So what adaptations need to be made in order to make you as efficient as you possibly can? You know,
Exactly.
you don't I no one needs to preach to me on being self-employed. Like I am like the most unemployable person ever. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. But again, that comes with its challenges. It's such a privilege to be self-employed and to be able to look after your children as well. But you know this as well. You have to absolutely work your socks off. Like you have to work so hard as well. So I think it's always a balancing act between, what do you personally want for it? And I've said it numerous times that self-employment is not for everybody. Um,
No,
you
no,
have to be a definite, type of person. So tell me about
absolutely.
what changed then when you feel different. You've had your daughter. What started to change in you to bring you back into this, this new woman that you've become?
I think for me, it was almost chasing goals, and I think it was turning pain into passion. Um, Using your voice. I think using your voice as an advocate is a huge tool that not many people do. And I think what comes with that is stigma. I think what comes with that is judgment. I think societal norms push you away from being your true self. We're all following influencers. We all want to be like, the best influencer on the socials because you've got to share, you've got to overshare, you've got to not share. And I think just being able to be myself was huge because as much as I loved my job as a long-standing police officer and a detective, I also felt like I was missing something because I was doing this long-hour job with, not really meeting my social needs because if there was a party, I couldn't go to it because I'd be on a late shift. If there was a family occasion, I wasn't on a rest day. I couldn't go. So I think it's just pulling it back and going, where do you see your life now and what are your priorities right now? And for me, my priorities were getting myself well again, and my priorities were therapeutic, rehabilitation. And that's when I actually thought, okay, what can I do here? I've had a really, really traumatic experience. I've become really, really unwell. I've hit rock bottom, but that doesn't mean to say you've got to stop there. What can you do with what you've learned now to go forward? And I think that was kind of like my strength was that as much as I've gone through all this trauma, there's going to be somebody out there that's struggling. And how can I turn this pain into a purpose? And my purpose was then found by becoming, this level 3 pre and postnatal specialist and helping mums to understand themselves, but also becoming a lived experience advocate because I do overshare. I do say it as it is. I do give the absolute shithole of motherhood because without somebody being completely frank and honest, everything is sugar coated, everything is rosy, everyone's in their baby bubbles, everyone's had wonderful water births, and they've gone on to walk their pram down the road. And for me, I didn't get that dream. So when I was going to baby classes and everyone was talking about these wonderful experiences, I would sit there in a shell of myself and just go, I don't want to share because if I share, I'm going to look like the nutty mum or I'm going to look like the mum that is really uncontrolled or can't handle herself or hasn't got her shit together. And for me, that was really overwhelming because I just thought, how do I even start my story? How do I even start this by showing them that I was a really upstanding police officer, that I held the law, I was really credible, and then I lost myself. And I just didn't know how to even verbalize that, if I'm honest with you. It was just so hard. And even when somebody, would say, "Oh, how was the birth?" I'd be like, "Yeah, great." Oh, and I'd just walk away straight away because I knew that I couldn't come out with what was going on in my head. So yeah, for me that the whole transition process of going into what I do now was based on lived experience and actually wanting to make a change, wanting to make that difference and helping those mums that, are sat there thinking, I'm on my own through this. No one's been through what I've been through. No one is listening to these thoughts in my head. No one thinks about walking down the stairs and you're going to drop your baby, because that was a constant thought in my head was, if I carry this baby down the stairs, am I going to drop it? What if she falls? What if I fall? What if I break my neck? Nobody finds me. What if the baby can't cry? What if nobody hears us? What if I can't get to my phone? And those thoughts are just constant intrusions that go through your mind on a daily basis. And it was like driving. I'd drive the car to Tesco and I'd be like, what if somebody crashes into the back of us and nobody finds us? Well, of course somebody's going to find you. But at that moment in time, it was always impending doom. It was
Yeah.
always like that what if scenario. So for me, it is helping mums to kind of decipher those thoughts and actually say, it's completely normal. We're not on planet Mars or Zog. We are on planet Earth. And it's okay to have those thoughts and have that little intrusion on your top of your shoulder coming in every minute of the day. But it's how you manage those thoughts and it's how you ground yourself and how you process those thoughts that make you understand them and make you go on to be the mum that, you can be, and the mum that you can thrive through with that motherhood, to be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when we launched the book last year, I know that, you pretty much read it within like a few hours and you were like, oh my God, like this was wrote for me. And that's exactly that was my lived experience that I wanted to get across as well. That I remember having my first and saying to a friend, I was chopping something and she was on like a bouncer on the floor. And I remember like going, imagine if I just threw this, like if I threw
Yeah,
it, this knife,
yeah,
and it hit her and it killed her. Like, and just being, and I said it to her, and she's like, "You are fucking mental." She's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, and then I remember just being like, "But why did I?" And then I was like, "Why did I think that? Why would I want? Like, I don't want to hurt her, but why did that go through my head?" And being so confused, and obviously everybody else that you see was very put together, was very like mumsy, and I was like, "This is not me. I feel weird. I feel like I'm pretending."
yeah,
And it just it's a really weird place to be, and I sat with this a lot while I was writing the book, and I'm like, does everybody feel like that? And then the more I spoke to more women, I mean, we've spoke to hundreds of women now in our careers, and the more I speak to them and the more that they actually open up, the more that it is a universal thing that we do, but we daren't share it because we're going to be looked at as a bad mother. We're going to be looked at as being ungrateful because we've got this beautiful child and there's so many people who would love to have their own baby and they can't, and we're going to be seen as ungrateful, so we can't possibly air these thoughts of where has my life gone, like what's happened. And I think actually being able to open that up to people and say, do you know what, it's okay to feel like you're going a little bit crazy, but the more we talk about it and normalize it, the more that actually we realize there's power together rather than
absolutely.
just
Absolutely. And I, when you touched on that then about like the fear of telling somebody, I remember that day where the health visitor came and she said, "Oh, you're not yourself. Your partner's worried about you." And she said, "I can see you've got your eyelashes on, and I can see that you've done your makeup." And at that point, I was like, "Oh gosh, my mask is slipping," and I started panicking. I was like, "Oh no, I've put my eyelashes on now because I'm trying to say that I'm okay, or I'm trying to dress nice because I want you to know that I'm in control." And what a fear to have that you just can't be yourself because you fear that your children are going to be taken off you, or services are just going to think you're absolutely nuts and that they shouldn't be in the home with you. And that's exactly the thoughts that I was having. I was so scared as a police officer to say, I haven't got my shit together, because I knew that one, my career was shot, two, I was possibly going to be sectioned, and three, they were potentially going to take that baby away because I just wasn't fit to be a mum. And those thoughts, I hear, so many mums every day saying, well, I don't want to tell the GP how I really feel because I'm scared they're going to put a C1 in, or they're going to put a referral in to this person or that person, or I'm going to lose my job. We shouldn't be living in that type of society. We should be confident enough to say, right now, I don't really feel like myself. I don't know what's going on, but I just need a bit of support. And we should be able to direct that support, and give that mum that nurture and care, the package that she needs to be able to go on and be the best mum that she can be.
Yeah. And this is something that is so important for me, personally, with the journey of, where Baby Beats has gone, is that it's the postnatal care that is the most important part of it. It's, the massage is lovely, the skin to skin is lovely, the baby yoga is lovely. There's so many lovely elements to it, but actually, I talk so much about having a village, and that is the most important part of building a community and building a group of women that are so unjudgmental, that are like, we get it. That actually it just, like, you can't even, like, even when I see the videos of like all the walks and the events that we've got going on, like, it literally makes me like, I'm like, don't cry," because it's so
You.
powerful.
Yeah, it is. And even when you're sat in the room, and for me, sometimes it's just being present. And you used to say, when we did our coaching, our initial coaching, and I started off with you, you said, don't be afraid of the silence. And I used to think, I need to fill it. Oh, fill the silence. Oh, quick, fill the silence. But actually now that silence is golden, because the minute that silence happens, a mum comes out with something that's happened last night, or a mum says, oh my gosh, let me tell you this, or let me tell you how I feel. And that room starts to fill with just such a presence and that village atmosphere. And I just sit back sometimes and I'm just in awe, and I just think, wow, look at what's being created. Like, it's just incredible. And I just sit there thinking, I'm just so glad that I can give this to the communities that need it, because it just gives you such an empowerment inside as a mum that was once there, sat in those dark thoughts thinking, I'm not going to get through this. And I'm sat back leading a class of mums to engage, to empower them, to give them the confidence back, to recover them. And it just literally enlightens you. And it makes my day. And yeah, I sometimes go home and I'm like, oh, like, gosh, like, get yourself together. But it's just lovely to see, because you don't believe in yourself when you first start off. And, we've had this conversation loads, and, I'm happy to share that, like, there's that imposter syndrome where you're always looking over your shoulder thinking someone's better, or you're always worried that someone's coming into the zone and they're going to do things a lot greater than you are. But, like we touched on with, winning the awards, it's a shock to me even now, because I literally sit there, and the most recent award that I went to in Cardiff, and the lady said to me, "Oh, have you prepared a speech?" And I was kind of taken aback, because I was like, "No, I actually haven't." And I'm sat with, Forbes 30 under 30s all planning their multi-million pound contract deals, and I'm sat there thinking, this is really small. Like, I'm just a little me in a little town in South Wales. There's no way this is going to be me. And then when my name was called and the lady said, get a speech ready, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got nothing prepared, because I really didn't think this was going to happen. And even when, I stood on the podium and I'm looking at all these people expecting this huge, phenomenal speech of like how I've secured, contracts, or how I've got all this funding behind me. And I haven't, I haven't. I just do it because I care. I do it because I've got passion. And I do it because I want mums to know that they're not on their own. And as hard as things get and as tough as they get, you can always make something of yourself. And that's why, I continue to do what I do. So for me, when people say, oh, look at your award, oh, that's brilliant, it is brilliant. But for me, it's the people in the room. It's not how many awards you get. It's not how much recognition you receive. As long as I'm giving the job to the people, and as long as I'm working with those mums to feel better, to feel confident, to feel empowered, and to possibly change their view on motherhood and actually look at it in a different way, I've I've been successful. So to me, it's never been about, those awards. It's more about that empowerment and creating that village where I know mums are now safe. I know mums have now got other mums in their zone, in their domain, that they can fall back on and go, I haven't really got my shit together today. Is anyone else feeling like this? And it's just nice to be able to tap in, to those WhatsApp groups that get created, to our online communities, to our socials with the Baby Beats walks, and everybody just being open and just being honest and having that real life talks that go on within every one of those events, to be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely. And you touched a little bit then on imposter syndrome, because this is something that we talk about a lot in business. I think for you, when you started, it was something that you really threw yourself into. I remember sending you a screenshot of like your earnings within like the first 2 weeks. And I was like, oh my God, Shannon. And I think you do get these peaks and troughs. Everybody does of imposter syndrome. And how have you found that you've dealt with that? Because you've had times where, you said the other day on training when we had like a group session, you said, you had massive life events happening and you'd let it slip for a little bit. How do you manage to bring yourself back and deal with the feelings of imposter syndrome?
think I think resilience is huge. I think having resilience and looking back, and for me, it's always looking back at what do you want? What do you want out of it? What do you want to get out of it? Where do you want to be? Because if you haven't got that goal, I think in corporate, people are setting goals for you. People are giving you their KPIs. People are giving you those motivators to be like, this is what I want from you. You need to deliver. So you're like, right, okay, boss. Yeah, I've got you. Tick the box. Let's go. When you're on your own, you don't get that person saying, I want these KPIs. I want these tasks associated. I want this to be dealt with. You're chasing those tasks on your own accord and you're chasing those dreams of what you want to deliver, and you need a clear plan. And I think the other side of things is, what do you need to be able to get where you want to be? Where do you see yourself? How are you going to get there? And then why don't you have it? And I always take myself back to those. Why haven't I got where I want that now? So it's almost having a passion constantly, being resilient that, okay, you've had a setback, but how do you overcome that setback? And what is your timeline to be able to get to where you need to be? And yeah, it is absolutely bloody hard. There are days where I think, is this any point? I've tried and tried and tried. We're not getting anywhere. Do I just sack it off and call it a day? But if you keep doing that and you just go, right, I'll sack it off, I'll call it a day, your motivator in your brain stops. So for me, it's almost telling yourself that you've done it before, you'll do it again. And you need a clear plan and you need that positive action and that reinforcement to be able to know why you do what you do. And when I get that mum that sends that text and goes, thank you so much. My prolapse, I've been told that it's gone now to a stage 2 rather than a stage 4. I literally get the flags out and I'm like, this is so exciting. Like I'm actually doing my job. But without that type of thing, sometimes I think if you're not getting those positive comments, that reinforcement, not having, that business coach behind you and having that driver to say, what are you doing? Where are we going? What's your goals this week? You can really just hit a low. And I think it's really important that you do check in with yourself. You are doing your business plans. Like, we do have regular training as a Baby Beats franchisee. And I think it's important that you understand those goals, because if you don't, then it will flop and it will
Yeah.
fail. And if you've not got a plan of attack, it is going to go down the pan really, really quickly. And like we always say, is sometimes you've got to change with society. So I think when we talk about things, we're always saying, all right, okay, let's go on social media. Okay, that algorithm has now changed. Come away from social media. You're an in-person salesperson. Okay, that's now changed. You're now a LinkedIn person. Go on to LinkedIn. Now that's changed. You go into networking events. There's so much changes through society where it's like fashion. You can be wearing denim one week, you're going to be wearing linen the next. And you've just got to keep up with the times. And I really think, you've got to keep that training aspect and you've got to keep your awareness and you've got to keep your engagement with your customers to know what they want, but also to know what you're delivering and where they want things delivered. So yeah, I would say resilience for me is huge. You've got to bounce back. You've got to show that you're willing. You've got to show motivation, because if you don't, your customers are not coming back. So the
Yeah.
minute you flop, they're not going to have that trust in you. They're not going to have that likability in you. They're going to think that, oh, she's not really bothered. She's just going to sink it down the pan. It's really important, I think, that you keep those people in your domain, because who knows who's having the next baby? Who knows
Yeah.
who's going to recommend their friends, their sisters, their aunties? It's really important, I think, that you build that rapport, you keep it strong. And like we always say, you can always transition them into the next class, whether that's, your baby beats into your mindful movers, into your functional foundations. It's always keeping that life cycle stream coming with you and building until that next family member has that baby and you invite them through the door. So yeah, resilience is key for me.
Yeah, resilience is up there for me as well. And I think even with the most resilience, every single business owner will have days where they go, what am I doing? Like, what am I actually doing? And I think that's just part of the journey. And you are completely right. That's having I mean, I talk about core values a lot and knowing what your core values are. And everybody's core values is different. Somebody might want to come into, say, a business like ours or set up something themselves independently. And it might all be about revenue, or it might all be about working, 2 days a week. Everybody's got a very different goal. And you are right. If you if you don't put the work in, and we say this over and over again, especially as a franchise model, is that
Yeah,
we can give you all the tools that you need, but you have to go out
absolutely.
there and deliver amazing classes. You have to go out there and build a business, and that's tough. And I don't know how many times I can say that actually. It is so tough. It doesn't matter what business you are in. And if it was easy, everybody would do it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and that's honestly, it's such a true aspect, and sometimes I sit and I go, "Oh, going back to corporate, you'll just get your salary, you won't have to worry." Yeah, great, but also you don't get that time with your family. You don't get
Yeah.
that time to go, "No, actually, do you know what? I want a day off. I'm gonna take the day off," or no, actually, I want to scale it up, or oh, I want to scale it down. You haven't got that ball game to play with. It's very regimented, and I think a lot of people are burning out in corporate because that holistic and well-being aspect isn't there. You are driving yourself to the bone. You are driving yourself to the core, and it's hard. It's a hard slog, and as is self-employment. But I think there's a difference in that well-being aspect where you can really tailor it to your own advantages in
Yeah.
that
I mean,
self-employment.
I took off Friday and Monday. I don't work weekends anyway, but I took Friday and Monday off to go to like a rugby tournament with my three children, my husband. We literally had the best time. I still jumped on a few emails. I taught my class on the Friday morning, but I still earned a really good amount during that time period. And actually, it affected nobody. And there was no like, and for me, I think with self employment, I always go, the sky's the limit. Like, there's no one telling us that this is our top end salary and you might get a bonus if you hit this. You can create everything yourself. You can be a thought leader. You can produce all these different things. And that's really exciting for me.
I think it's a huge thing, and I think that's probably why joining Baby Beats as a brand was a seller for me, was because there's a loyalty, but you're not left in the dark. And
Yeah.
for me, that's just a key aspect of business is that, okay, yeah, you're running your own situation, you do things your way. However, you're still at a point of contact, you're still at that liaison where if you are struggling or you're thinking, I've literally hit a wall, you've got that credibility to fall back on, to have that conversation with yourself and go, I need to reset. Where do I go? And it just opens so many more doors. And I think, there's always something that you haven't thought about. And having the team behind us and having the other, or the other women involved where we can brainstorm those ideas is huge because you don't fall off the wagon and think, I've got nothing left to give. There's always someone who's going to give you that little bit of imagination.
I talked yesterday online about, women in business. And actually, I spent so long doing it by myself and finding a group of women that actually it gives you so much. Like, it just gives you so much just to go. I think we were chatting, I think it was me and you that was chatting about the whole burger analogy that we were talking
Yeah,
about. And you messaged me back and you were like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. I'd never thought of
it
it
is.
like that.
It is literally like and that's blown my mind because it is everywhere I go now. I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. But actually, if you just do that, you get a bit more for you. And I do it myself now. And it was something that I'd never even thought of. But even for me, you look at something and you're on TikTok, the algorithm pulls you in for mascara, but you can get the same mascara on Amazon for cheaper. But why are people buying that brand? Is it because it's more loyal? Is it because it's better subscriptions? What's going on? And I'm all for it now. I really delve into it and find out why people want that and not the latter. So yeah, I think it is. It's having confidence in yourself, having confidence in your skills, your experience, and knowing why people choose you. Having that drive and keeping it motivated that you are the reason people are coming to the class. It's you've got to keep up with the times and you've got to keep that skill set appearing in an algorithm and in people's domain so that they trust in you.
Yeah.
It's a huge factor. And I think I going through mental health and going through what I went through, I never thought I'd get that back. So to have that back in your system where you feel valued and you have a drive to wake up in the morning and you want to be present and you want to do things for the good, yeah, it changes your whole outlook on life.
So tell us, what was the award that you won most recently?
So the one I won most recently was Inspiring Female Leader of Wales, um, which was basically the Women Founder Awards, and they were based in Wales. They run all over the UK, so I think they head into Ireland this week. But yeah, so it was a Wales award, which was quite surreal, just totally like unexpected. I had the email, and if I'm honest with you, I thought it was a spam email. You get these ones where they where they say, pay a package to join our awards ceremony, or pay £300 and we'll give you a trophy and this. And I thought, oh gosh, okay. So I kind of opened it and kind of put it to the side and was like, no, that's not for me. And then I thought, I better actually email back and say, I'm really sorry, but I think you've got the wrong person. I haven't nominated myself. I'm really, this isn't for me, I don't think. And she came back and she said, oh, if you've got a number, I'll give you a call. Um, and then I had this notice saying, yeah, you've been nominated quite a few times for the category. We've received your story. We've also had a few people add on nominations after you've explained that you've been nominated online. And she said, when we've read the stories, we're quite inspired by how you got to where you are today. And she said, I can't believe that you thought about giving up. And I can't believe that you thought that you would end everything and not be here to see your child grow up. And that really sat with me. That was kind of a gosh, a moment of I think self-belief that I have actually got where I am today, and I didn't think I would get there. And then to receive that award on top of it, going to a ceremony with big people like Cardiff Life, they're one of the leading magazines in Cardiff. You had business to business people there, which are making multi-million-pound contract deals in America, Dubai, you name it, they've got a deal. And I was sat there with all these amazing people and inspired as well, really inspired. And something that kind of sat with me when I was sat there was a lady who'd set up a charity because her daughter had unfortunately committed suicide. And I took my mum along with me to the awards, and she sat next to me and she whispered to me and said, that could have been me, that could have been me setting up that charity because you weren't going to be here anymore. And it really resonated with me. I got quite emotional. And I sat there and I thought, gosh, like, imagine I hadn't got through that life event. Imagine I hadn't pushed myself or had that drive to keep going, that my daughter wouldn't have her mum today, the business wouldn't be where it is, and I wouldn't be this inspiring leader. So for me, it was a real eye opener, and a real storytelling exercise. I think was huge. And after I delivered my speech, a lot of the people came up and said, you're an asset to Wales. Like you're phenomenal. Like to have that resilience and strength to overcome that is just something incredible. And when you hear people talking about you like that, it's quite surreal. And as you almost don't want to believe it, and you almost go, that's not me. Is that me? Is that really me? Is my name just being called? And yeah, it was a really lovely, resonating evening of why I do what I do. And it really did bring everything back to the start for me. And it was a realization of keep going,
Yeah.
because you never know what's around the corner, and you never know who's watching. And that's what I'll finish. That's what I'll say, is that you never know who's watching your movements, and you'll never know who you are inspiring. Because I didn't know that, there was only, I think there was 50 people in the draw, and I won out of those 50 people. And I was, I don't know any of the other stories, but I imagine some of the stories are very profound and amazing. And yeah, my story won out of them all. And yeah, it shocks me even now. I'm just in awe, and I respect every single person that, has said those lovely things, because I do what I do because I never want anyone to feel alone. And I hope I do. Even if I inspire one person, wonderful. If I inspire 10, great. If I inspire 1,000, even better.
So you need to get rid of that imposter syndrome now. You've got it now. You've got the award. You've got the badge. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for joining us today. Please, can you let our listeners know where they can find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me on at RCT Baby Beats, and via emails as well. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Shannon Davies, and you'll find me through the Baby Beats RCT business. And I look forward to speaking to anyone that wants to chat.
And so if you want to connect with Shannon, I will put all the links in the show notes. If you are in her area, she not only runs classes, but you run free walks and events as well. So you can connect, find that village, come meet her, and come and meet some other mums. Thank you ever so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for letting me be on. Take care, Mose.
You've just listened to I'm Fine But. If you're unsure about business or what really matters to you right now, why not take our free core values course? It's linked in the show notes, and it's a brilliant place to begin. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and you can follow us online at all your favourite social media platforms at Baby Beat UK. Until next time, I'm Rose and I'm fine. But honestly, we're all just figuring it out.